Welcome to TOCHI Stories. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notification because it will mean the whole world to me. Now let's get right into the story. Brace yourself. The sound of clinking glasses, soft jazz, and the laughter of the rich filled the grand ballroom of the Royal Crest Hotel. Adana stood quietly in the corner, dressed in her faded hotel maid uniform, wiping the sweat off her brow with the back of her hand. At 35 years old, life had been anything but kind to her. Born into poverty, abandoned by family, and left to fend for herself since her teenage years, the only thing she had ever known was struggle. Working at this five-star hotel should have been a blessing, but the meager salary barely fed her, let alone cleared the mounting debts from rent, food, and the constant harassment of loan sharks. Her life was a cycle of suffering. Wake up, clean after the rich, smile at rude guests, and return to a one-room shack with nothing but soaked Gary to drink. Yet tonight felt different. The weight of her problems pressed harder than ever, suffocating her spirit. As she pushed her cleaning cart past the VIP lounge, her eyes locked momentarily with a man standing alone by the balcony. Tall, dark-skinned, with a commanding presence, dressed in an expensive tailored suit, he looked detached from the event, sipping his wine and staring into space. Something about his gaze struck her, not just his wealth, but the loneliness in his eyes. Maybe it was her exhaustion or the pain of being invisible her entire life, but when he suddenly turned and spoke to her, casually, without arrogance, she found herself answering. What started as harmless conversation drifted into laughter. He asked about her life, shocking her with his genuine curiosity. Nobody had ever asked her that before. He didn't introduce himself, and she didn't ask. Maybe she was scared he would change his tone the moment she knew his status. One thing led to another, and against every principle she held, emotions overtook reason. Whether it was loneliness, her need for comfort, or the rare kindness he showed, Adana found herself in his hotel suite later that night. It was supposed to be meaningless, a fleeting escape from her miserable existence. They barely spoke after. By morning, when she woke, he was gone, his things packed, room empty, no note, no number, not even a name. All that remained was the scent of expensive cologne and the echo of her own regret. Adana stood there in silence, realizing that her life, already broken, was about to spiral into something far worse. She had no idea that this nameless stranger was not just a guest, but a billionaire whose choices would soon shatter everything she thought she knew about her world. 3 weeks passed, and something felt wrong. Her body heavier, her appetite strange, and her constant nausea impossible to ignore. The moment she missed her period, panic set in like a hurricane. A cheap pregnancy test confirmed the truth she dreaded. She was pregnant. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled as she sat alone in the small servant locker room, staring at the 2 pink lines. The father, the man whose name she didn't even know, was untouchable, untraceable, swallowed by a world Adana had no access to. Fear mixed with disbelief. How could she be so foolish? What was she thinking? Her tears rolled silently down her cheeks, knowing the consequences for someone like her were far graver than just the shame of an unplanned pregnancy. Her fears materialized faster than she expected. Gossip spread among staff like wildfire. By the following week, her hotel supervisor called her into the office. "You think we don't know? You embarrassed this hotel. You broke the rules," he spat, his face twisted with disgust. "Sleeping with guests is against company policy. You've stained the hotel's reputation." Adana pleaded, tried explaining, even broke down sobbing, but her cries fell on deaf ears. "Pack your things. You're fired. Out." Just like that, the job that barely sustained her was gone. Her shame was dragged through the hallways by whispering colleagues who once smiled at her. Some laughed, others pitied her, but no one helped. As security escorted her out of the staff quarters, all she had left were the few clothes in a nylon bag and an unborn child growing inside her. Standing under the blistering sun outside the hotel gates, Adana trembled, both from fear and the crushing realization that she was completely alone. No job, no home, no money, no family, and now a child. A child she hadn't planned for, fathered by a man who had vanished like a ghost. Desperately, she tried going back to the reception to ask about him, begging for his name, hoping to see a logbook, a receipt, anything. But the hotel manager threatened to call the police for trespassing. They wanted nothing to do with her anymore. "Go away before we deal with you," one security guard barked. Her knees buckled. Her tears were hot. With nowhere to go, she picked up her bag and wandered aimlessly through the busy streets of Lagos, carrying not just the weight of her unborn child, but the heavy truth that life was about to drown her in a way it never had before. For the next few days, Adana became a shadow wandering the bustling city, surviving on sachet water and begging for food. Every morning, she stood by the hotel gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who had unknowingly turned her world upside down. But day after day, different faces walked in and out, none of them familiar. Her belly was already starting to bloat, a constant reminder that time wasn't on her side. When she wasn't searching at the hotel, she wandered the luxury districts, sitting near parking lots, scanning expensive cars, asking herself, was it that man in the Mercedes? Or the one in the Prado? Desperation gnawed at her bones. She even approached some hotel staff, begging them to check the guest list, but no one dared. One day, in an act of madness, she sneaked into the hotel kitchen, pretending to be one of the staff. She found her way to the front desk records, but was quickly caught. Dragged by security like a thief, she begged them, sobbing, "Please, I just want his name. Help me, please. I'm carrying his child." But the manager roared in front of guests, "This woman is a disgrace. A shameless thing. Get her out of here, before she soils this place further." The guests stared, some laughing, others shaking their heads. Her humiliation was public. Adana felt like dirt beneath their feet, unseen, unwanted, unworthy. With nowhere else to turn, she walked for miles until her swollen feet gave up. That night, she slept behind an abandoned market stall, her body shivering in the cold harmattan wind. As she lay there, one hand wrapped around her belly, she whispered softly, "I don't know who your father is, but I will fight for you. I will fight for both of us." But what Adana didn't know was that fate was only beginning to play its cruel hand. For the life growing inside her wasn't just a child, but two souls connected by blood, yet destined to be torn apart by poverty, desperation, and a secret that would one day shake an entire family to its core. Adana's belly grew as the weeks turned into months, and with every inch her body expanded, so did her suffering. Finding a place to sleep became an everyday battle. Sometimes a kind street hawker would offer her a spot under their stall at night, but most days she curled up behind abandoned buildings or unfinished construction sites, wrapping herself in old sacks to fight the cold. She survived by doing anything her body could manage, washing clothes for market women, carrying water for street vendors, or sweeping the floors of roadside kiosks. But as her pregnancy advanced, the strength in her legs failed her more frequently. There were days she sat under the scorching sun, hands outstretched, begging strangers for spare change, not out of laziness, but from pure exhaustion. Even then, some would throw insults instead of coins. "Shameless woman. Why open your legs if you cannot feed yourself?" Words like knives that stabbed her soul repeatedly. Her hunger became a constant companion, gnawing at her like a parasite that refused to die. She often drank water to trick her stomach into feeling full. Some nights, her belly growled so loudly it echoed in the silence. Her body thinned drastically despite being pregnant, her cheekbones sharper, her arms bonier, but the bulge in her stomach grew rounder, heavier. As her due date neared, a strange mixture of joy and dread consumed her. Joy because she had always wanted children. Dread because she had no idea how to bring them into a world where even she wasn't surviving. As she sat by the roadside one day, caressing her swollen belly, she whispered to her unborn child, "I don't know how, but I will love you. I will protect you." What she didn't know, however, was that there wasn't just one heartbeat inside her, but two, both fluttering, both waiting to meet a mother whose love was limitless, but whose hands were desperately empty. By her 8th month, her body couldn't take it anymore. She collapsed one evening on a dusty road not far from a local clinic. Some market women rushed her there. Panting, groaning, fighting for breath, Adana went through the most painful hours of her life. With no money to pay, the nurses almost turned her away until a kind elderly woman pleaded on her behalf. After long hours of agony, pushing with every bit of strength left in her broken body, the room was filled with the cries of not one, but two beautiful baby girls. Tears flooded Adana's face as the nurse placed the tiny babies in her arms. She was shocked, speechless, overwhelmed. For a brief moment, as she stared at their tiny faces, perfect identical, with smooth brown skin and curly tufts of hair, her pain disappeared. She smiled through her tears and whispered, "My angels, my blessing." But deep down, even as her lips trembled with love, a dark cloud loomed. How would she feed them? How would she keep them alive? The first few weeks after childbirth were the most physically demanding and emotionally draining days of Adana's life. She had two newborns constantly crying for breast milk, warmth, and comfort. Three things she could barely provide. Her body, already weakened by starvation during pregnancy, produced almost no breast milk. She mixed pap with water, sometimes feeding them with mashed banana when she could afford it, but most times it was just sugar water. The guilt of watching them cry in hunger haunted her every second. She wrapped one baby on her back, the other on her chest, and roamed the streets from sunrise to sunset, begging, washing clothes, or doing menial tasks. It broke her completely the day a passerby sneered, "You should have closed your legs. Now you're dragging two bastards around town like stray dogs." She cried in public that day, not because of the insult, but because deep inside, she feared it was true. Despite it all, she loved them. Every time she looked into their eyes, those innocent, curious brown eyes that didn't yet understand how cruel the world was, she felt a fierce determination burn in her chest. She named them Anita and Amara. Anita meaning priceless, because despite being poor, the child was worth more than gold to her. Amara meaning grace, because she hoped for undeserved kindness from life. She sang to them at night, whispered promises that one day things would get better. But every day brought a fresh wave of reality that slapped her back into despair. There were days when all she had to eat was the leftover water from boiled rice that a restaurant discarded. She watched as other mothers with their strollers walked past, oblivious to her pain, and wondered why fate hated her so much. Her body grew frilier. Her bones ached constantly. Her eyes became sunken. As the twins turned two, it became glaringly clear. She couldn't do this anymore. No matter how much she worked, begged, or prayed, there was never enough. One evening, as she sat under a mango tree watching the twins sleep side by side, thin from hunger but still smiling in their innocence, the cruelest thought entered her mind. What if I give one away? Just one, to someone who can give her a better life. At first, she shook her head, horrified at the idea. But as the days passed, the baby's cries grew louder, and her stomach stayed emptier. The thought transformed from horror to possibility, and from possibility into a plan. It was on a Sunday afternoon when the offer came, disguised as help, but it felt like a dagger straight into Adana's soul. A woman named Madame Felicia, who often sold second-hand clothes nearby, had been observing Adana's struggle for months. She approached with a voice dipped in sympathy. "My dear, you're suffering. You can't keep living like this. I know a wealthy family. They've been searching for a child for years. They will pay you 200,000 Nigerian nairas and take care of the baby like a queen." Adana's throat closed. 200,000 Nigerian nairas sounded like salvation, enough to clear debts, rent a room, start a food stall, and at least feed herself and one child. But it also sounded like betrayal. Betrayal of the tiny hands that gripped her chest every night. For days, she battled herself. She walked to the lagoon bridge more than once, contemplating ending it all. But every time she looked at Anita and Amara, smiling, giggling, calling her mama in their tiny voices, she broke down. "Which one?" she whispered in the dark one night, holding their tiny palms. "How do I even choose?" In the end, it was Amara, not because she loved her less, but because Amara had been the quieter baby, the one who cried less, who often sat looking into the sky as though she didn't belong here. Maybe fate was choosing for her. Maybe. The next morning, with trembling hands, she wrapped Amara in her only clean wrapper, kissed her forehead 100 times, and handed her to Madame Felicia, who took her to the wealthy family waiting in a tinted black Jeep. As the car drove away, Adana fell to her knees in the dust, screaming a sound so raw that even strangers passing by froze. She clawed at the ground, beating her chest, crying out, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her screams echoed against the buildings, swallowed by the noise of Lagos, but the ache in her chest never left. Holding Anita tightly, she whispered broken promises. "I'll never let anyone take you again. Never." She didn't know, she couldn't have known, that the wealthy family who now owned Amara was no stranger at all. It was the family of the very man who unknowingly fathered both girls. Neither the billionaire nor his family knew that the girl they just adopted was his own flesh and blood. The threads of destiny had tangled, and one day this tangled web would explode in a way that no one, not even fate itself, could ever undo. The day after Amara was taken felt like walking through the ashes of a burned-down home. Adana's chest was heavy, her arms suddenly too light, her back missing the familiar weight of the twin she used to strap behind her. She held Anita closer than ever, terrified as though the universe might steal this last piece of her away too. Her heart ached with a constant gnawing pain, a wound that no medicine could heal. But with the 200,000 Nigerian nairas in her trembling hands, a wave of bittersweet relief washed over her. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. She immediately paid off the ruthless debt collectors who had threatened to strip her naked in public just a week earlier. Then she rushed to rent a small one-room apartment, nothing fancy, just a zinc-roofed room with cracked walls. But it was a palace compared to sleeping in gutters. With the remaining money, Adana bought food, real food. For the first time in months, Anita tasted rice, real milk, and soft bread instead of watery pap. The sight of her daughter smiling with a mouthful of food sent a bittersweet arrow straight to Adana's heart. She tried to convince herself she had made the right choice. Amara is safe. She's safe. She'll be better. She'll eat every day. She'll have a good life. She'll thank me one day, right? She whispered over and over like a prayer. But every time Anita laughed, Adana saw Amara's face, her quiet twin, and her heart broke all over again. She often woke up at night startled, reaching out for a baby that wasn't there anymore, only to feel the emptiness beside her. Meanwhile, far across the city, Amara was carried into a mansion surrounded by marble floors, gold chandeliers, and polished cars that gleamed under the sun. The woman who bought her, Mrs. Neka, the billionaire's elder sister, had been desperate for a child for years. Unable to conceive, she jumped at the chance when Madame Felicia presented the baby. She never asked questions, never wondered why a child so perfect was for sale. All she knew was that fate had smiled on her. As Amara grew in this new world, she was showered with every luxury money could buy, designer clothes, toys imported from Europe, expensive nannies, and international schooling. But one thing money couldn't buy was humility. By the time Amara was 5, she had absorbed the language of wealth and entitlement. She learned early that money meant power, and that anyone beneath her was irrelevant. What neither Amara nor her adopted mother knew was that the very man who often visited that mansion, Neka's younger brother, the billionaire, was Amara's biological father. As the years trickled by, the gap between Anita's world and Amara's became a canyon, deep, wide, and impossible to cross. Anita grew up in the bustling, gritty streets of Ajigunle, a neighborhood where survival was an achievement. Her mother, Adana, worked every odd job imaginable, washing clothes for richer families, selling roasted plantain, hawking pure water, and sometimes cleaning houses. Anita learned hardship like it was a second language. From the age of 6, she started following her mother to the market to help, her tiny hands carrying bags, her feet bruised from walking barefoot on the hot tarred roads. Yet, despite the suffering, Anita developed a strong spirit. Her mother always reminded her, "Poverty is loud, but your dignity must be louder." Anita grew humble, kind, and empathetic, learning to share even the little she had with other street children. Meanwhile, Amara's life couldn't have been more different. She grew up behind high walls, air-conditioned rooms, and private schools with chauffeurs waiting at the gates. Her childhood was filled with ballet classes, piano lessons, and summer vacations in Dubai and London. But with privilege came arrogance. Teachers often complained about her bossy attitude, her tendency to look down on classmates who weren't dressed in the latest fashion. She had little empathy for anyone outside her bubble. When her adopted mother, Mrs. Necka, scolded her, it fell on deaf ears because everyone else, the maids, drivers, and staff, obeyed her every command. Amara quickly learned that money wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon. She wielded it ruthlessly, even as a child. Unknown to her, every time her uncle, the billionaire, visited, he often felt drawn to her in strange ways, wondering why she reminded him of someone he couldn't place. When the girls turned 17, fate, that cruel puppeteer, tightened the strings. Both applied to the same prestigious university. Amara, naturally, was admitted because her family could afford it. Anita, however, fought her way in through a scholarship, the only way children from her kind of background ever set foot in such places. Their first meeting happened on orientation day. Anita stood in line, her faded but clean gown pressed carefully, her hair neatly packed in a simple bun. Amara arrived moments later, stepping out of a black Mercedes in a designer gown, her hair flowing in a sleek, expensive weave. As they locked eyes, both gasped as though staring into a mirror. But while Anita's heart raced with confusion, Amara sneered in disgust. "What kind of joke is this?" she spat. "Do poor people now clone themselves to feel special?" And just like that, their war began, a war neither of them knew was born from blood. From that day forward, Amara made Anita's life a living hell. In class, in the cafeteria, at group projects, wherever their paths crossed, Amara made sure to embarrass Anita. She laughed at her worn shoes, called her charity case, and often threw phrases like, "Even if you look like me, you can never be me." At first, other students found it strange. Two girls who looked like twins, yet acted like sworn enemies. Whispers filled the hallways. Some assumed they were long-lost relatives. Others thought it was coincidence. But neither girl had answers. Anita, raised with grace despite poverty, tried to ignore it. She focused on her studies, determined not to let Amara's cruelty define her. But there were days she would return to her hostel, bury her face in her pillow, and cry silently, asking God, "Why do I look like someone who hates me so much?" What made it worse was that Amara's influence was heavy. Coming from one of the wealthiest families in the city meant her words carried weight. People wanted her friendship or feared her rejection. Some students joined in mocking Anita just to gain Amara's favor. But amidst the cruelty, a few noticed Anita's resilience, her kind heart, her refusal to fight dirty. Professors admired her brilliance. Some classmates grew secretly fond of her, respecting how she rose above it all. But none dared stand against Amara openly. Every insult, every humiliation Anita endured only made her spirit harder, like iron forged in fire. Yet deep within her chest, a storm brewed, not just of sadness, but of questions. Why do we look alike? Why does fate hate me this much? Meanwhile, the billionaire Amara's biological father continued visiting the campus occasionally for business forums and events. One afternoon, while passing through the administration block, his eyes accidentally landed on Anita. For a brief moment, his footsteps froze. "Amara," he called instinctively. But the girl turned, confused. As he stepped closer, his brows furrowed. Something was off. This girl looked like his daughter, but there was none of the arrogance. Her eyes held humility, pain, and strength. "Sorry, sir," Anita said softly, bowing her head. He nodded awkwardly and left, but the image lingered in his mind long after. Why did she look exactly like Amara? And why did she feel so different? The strings of destiny tightened again, ready to pull every hidden secret into the light. For days after that strange encounter, the billionaire couldn't shake the image of the girl he mistook for Amara. Something about her wasn't just familiar, it felt deeply personal, almost unsettling. Her eyes, the shape of her face, the gentle humility in her voice, everything about her was a mirror to his daughter, but also completely opposite. While Amara walked with her chin high, dripping in pride and entitlement, this girl's gaze was soft, her posture humble, yet filled with quiet strength. He tried to dismiss it, but the thought nagged at him like an itch that refused to go away. The next time he visited the campus for a board meeting, he found himself intentionally slowing down near the faculty block, eyes scanning for that face, the face he couldn't forget. As if destiny had written the script, he saw her again, Anita, sitting under a tree, reading an old, worn-out textbook while other students scrolled through iPhones and laptops. Something tugged at his heart in a way he couldn't explain. He walked toward her. "Excuse me, young lady," he said, voice softer than intended. Anita looked up, startled but polite. She stood immediately, bowing slightly. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted, her voice laced with a kind of respect that wasn't common in kids from wealthy homes. "What's your name?" he asked, pretending curiosity. "Anita. Anita Adana," she replied. The name hit him like a subtle slap. Adana? It stirred something, but he couldn't quite place it. "You look familiar," he muttered, more to himself. Anita smiled awkwardly. "I get that a lot, sir," she replied, hiding the ache in her chest, because even she didn't understand the cruel joke of fate that made her look like someone who hated her. That brief conversation sparked something unusual. The billionaire, whose name was Mr. Obinna Nwokocha, found himself curious beyond reason. He offered Anita his business card. "If you ever need advice, career, guidance, anything, don't hesitate," he said. Anita hesitated. The card felt like both a blessing and a mystery. Why would a man of his status offer her something like this? She nodded, thanked him, and tucked it carefully into her worn notebook. From that day on, Mr. Obinna found more reasons to visit the campus, occasionally checking on Anita under the guise of mentoring promising students. Each meeting deep with a strange pull he felt toward her. She was bright, respectful, and carried herself with grace despite her obvious lack of wealth. And each day, the question grew louder in his mind. Who is this girl, and why does my heart feel like I've known her forever? When Amara found out her father had been visiting the school more frequently, and worse, that he had been seen speaking to Anita, her rage ignited into something uncontrollable. She had spent her entire life basking in the comfort of being the center of his attention. She was the jewel of the family, the adored niece, the girl who always got what she wanted. But now this ragged, pitiful, charity case doppelganger was worming her way into her father's favor, and she would not have it. Amara stormed into the cafeteria one afternoon, where Anita sat quietly eating a small bowl of Gary and groundnuts. Her heels clicked against the floor like war drums. With every student watching, Amara stood before her, crossed her arms, and sneered. "You think dressing like me, copying my face, and getting close to my father will make you me? Sorry to break it to you, even if you look like me, you can never be me." The cafeteria went silent. All eyes flicked between the two girls, mirrors of each other in face, but worlds apart in posture. Anita stood slowly, eyes trembling but firm. "I never tried to be you, Amara," she replied, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I don't need to be you. I'm me." The audacity of that statement sent Amara into a fresh wave of fury. "You," she spat, laughing bitterly. "A street rat? A girl whose shoes cost less than my chewing gum? You think being humble makes you special." She grabbed Anita's bag and tossed it across the floor, scattering her books. Some students gasped. Others laughed nervously, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent to avoid Amara's wrath. Anita bent to gather her books silently, swallowing her tears like poison. But something shifted in that moment. While Amara expected the humiliation to shatter Anita, what she didn't realize was that every insult, every act of cruelty only forged Anita's resolve harder. Deep inside, Anita promised herself, "I will rise. One day I'll rise. Not because I hate her, but because I refuse to let the world convince me that I am nothing." Yet, what neither girl understood, not yet, was that their hatred wasn't born out of rivalry. It was born out of blood. Two souls tied together by a secret their mother prayed would never surface, a secret now trembling on the edge of discovery. Mr. Obinna, began noticing the drastic difference between Anita and Amara. The more time he spent around Anita, the more he wondered how two girls, who looked so alike, could be so different in character. Anita was respectful, hardworking, and always spoke with kindness, never entitlement. She listened. She asked questions about success, life, and growth, and when he helped her, she always expressed sincere gratitude, something Amara never did. He tried to dismiss the growing discomfort in his heart, but it haunted him. There was something more here, something deeper. He even found himself canceling meetings just to sit with Anita in the school's small garden, talking about life, education, and her dreams of one day becoming someone successful enough to help others. This shift didn't go unnoticed by Amara. Her jealousy became venomous. At home, she raged. She broke things. She screamed at the maids, accusing them of being useless. And every time her father mentioned Anita's name, even in passing, Amara's stomach churned with toxic envy. One evening, when Anita was invited to the mansion for a family dinner, under the guise of mentorship, Amara cornered her in the hallway when nobody was watching. She pushed her against the wall, her nails digging into Anita's arm. "Listen, you imposter," she hissed. "Enjoy your little visits now. But remember, no matter how much you look like me, you will never be me. You don't belong here. You never will." Anita stared back, trembling but refusing to break. "I didn't come here to be you, Amara," she whispered. "I just came to be me." And yet, behind those words was a confusion neither girl could admit. They both saw it, the way their faces mirrored each other like a glitch in reality. They both felt it, the unspoken truth pounding beneath their skins. Why do we look so alike? Why does fate insist on forcing us into each other's paths? But the answers were locked away, buried under years of secrets, sacrifices, and one mother's painful decision. What none of them knew yet was that this fragile tension was a ticking time bomb, one destined to explode in a way that would shatter their lives forever. Obina sat in his office that evening, staring at his laptop, but his mind was far from his business reports. Instead, it was stuck on the strange girl who had somehow wormed her way into his thoughts, Anita. It wasn't just her face, though that alone was a mirror image of Amara. It was her character, her humility, her decency, her hunger for knowledge, qualities that were becoming increasingly foreign in his daughter. He found himself questioning everything. How could two people look so alike yet be so drastically different in soul? He reached for a framed photo of Amara on his desk, a picture from her sweet 16th birthday party, dressed in diamonds and designer clothes, posing with a pout that barely hid her arrogance. Then his mind flashed to Anita, sitting on a wooden bench, smiling with gratitude simply because he offered her advice and lunch. The contrast was haunting. Obina tried convincing himself it was all just coincidence, that sometimes the world did strange things. But something inside refused to accept that. He thought about the name she mentioned, Adana. It triggered something deep in his memory, but like a word stuck on the tip of his tongue, he couldn't fully grasp it. Was it someone he knew? A staff member? A friend of the family? No, he couldn't remember. But the unease refused to leave. The more he engaged Anita, the more fond he grew of her. He started looking forward to their meetings, listening to her talk about her dreams of becoming someone great, someone who could lift her mother out of poverty. Each word felt like an echo of something familiar, almost familial. Why does she feel like my own blood? The thought whispered again. Meanwhile, at home, the tension grew unbearable. Amara was no fool. She noticed every time her father's face softened whenever he mentioned Anita. She noticed the extra minutes he spent on the phone texting someone, only to overhear him saying, "It's for the girl, Anita." Her rage boiled into obsession. She trashed her room more than once, breaking mirrors, tearing clothes, screaming at the walls like a madwoman. But what hurt her most wasn't just jealousy, it was the fear. A fear she couldn't name. A fear that maybe, just maybe, this girl wasn't some random lookalike. Maybe the universe was playing a cruel game, and Amara felt it in her bones that if she didn't act, she would lose everything. The day Mr. Obina officially invited Anita to his mansion under the pretense of mentorship was the day the silent battle, between the twins escalated into open warfare. Anita arrived dressed modestly, a simple floral gown, worn but clean, and her natural afro tied into a neat bun. The guards at the gate looked confused at first, thinking it was Amara returning early. But when they saw another car pull up with the real Amara, their eyes darted between the two girls in disbelief. The driver mumbled to himself, "God is truly mysterious." As Anita walked into the mansion, her eyes widened at the opulence: marble floors, golden chandeliers, a spiral staircase with velvet carpets. She had never seen wealth like this up close. Despite her awe, she remained grounded, reminding herself why she was here: not to envy, not to compete, but to learn to rise. Obinna welcomed her warmly, ignoring the visible tension on Amara's face. Over dinner, he asked Anita about her dreams, her struggles, her plans after graduation. Anita spoke with sincerity, sometimes choking back tears when speaking of her mother. "She's the strongest woman I know. Everything I am, everything I want to be, it's because of her." Obinna found himself smiling, nodding, even feeling emotional at her words. But sitting across the table, Amara gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white. She stabbed at her food, not tasting it, only glaring daggers at Anita. And when her father excused himself to take a business call, Amara pounced. "You enjoy this, don't you?" she hissed, leaning across the table. "Sitting here, pretending you belong? Walking into my home like you deserve it? Let me make something very clear to you. I don't care what game you're playing with my father. You will never be me. You hear me? Even if you look like me, you will never be me." Anita's hands trembled slightly, but she lifted her head, locking eyes with Amara. "I never wanted to be you," she said softly. "But if being kind, respectful, and decent makes me look different from you, then maybe I should be grateful." Her words hit like a slap. Amara's face twisted with fury. Her nails dug into her palm so deeply that she nearly drew blood. But she held back, masking her hatred with a tight-lipped smile as footsteps returned, because the battle had only just begun. Amara couldn't hold it anymore. The humiliation of seeing Anita walk around her house, laughing with her father, petting her dogs, talking to her maids, was driving her insane. Days after the dinner, she plotted ways to make Anita pay. One afternoon, while their father was out at a meeting, Anita stopped by the house to return some books Mr. Obinna had lent her. Amara saw it as the perfect opportunity. She cornered Anita near the garden, away from the CCTV, away from the staff. "I warned you," she spat, stepping dangerously close. "But you didn't listen." Anita sighed. "I came to return books, Amara." "Why do you hate me so much?" Amara scoffed. "Because you exist." Without another word, she shoved Anita hard. Anita stumbled backward, hitting her back against a low garden wall. "Stop it, Amara," she cried. But Amara wasn't listening. She shoved again, this time harder, sending Anita falling sideways toward the stone pavement. Her head hit the edge of the fountain with a sickening thud. Blood immediately seeped from her forehead. For a split second, Amara froze, her mouth falling open in horror. "No, no, no, get up. Get up," she screamed, shaking Anita's limp body. But Anita's eyes rolled back as her body went completely still. Panic overtook Amara. She paced back and forth, pulling at her hair. Her mind raced. "What have I done? Oh God, what have I done?" She screamed for help, and the maids rushed out. Chaos erupted. The driver carried Anita's limp body into the car, blood staining his uniform. Amara followed, shaking, her hands stained with Anita's blood. "Please, please don't die," she whispered repeatedly, her earlier hatred now twisted into fear. They sped toward the hospital. As the car swerved through traffic, Amara's heart pounded, so loud it drowned every other sound. For the first time, the question she had buried deep surfaced in her mind. Who is this girl? Why does she look like me? Why does this feel like hurting myself? But it was too late to turn back now. The secrets of the past were sprinting toward them, faster than anyone could imagine. The hospital was chaos. Nurses ran toward the emergency entrance as the driver screeched the car to a halt. Two male nurses rushed forward with a stretcher, their expressions tightening the moment they saw Anita's bloodied face and limp body. Severe head trauma, one muttered as they strapped her to the stretcher. Amara jumped out of the car, hands shaking, voice trembling as she screamed, "Do something! Don't let her die! Don't let her die, please!" Her fingers were still stained with Anita's blood, her mind spiraling between terror and guilt. Her arrogant pride had evaporated, replaced by pure panic. The image of Anita's body collapsing, the sound of her skull hitting the fountain edge, played over and over in her head like a nightmare on loop. The nurses wheeled Anita into the intensive care unit, while a doctor in green scrubs barked orders. "Get me blood pressure readings. Prepare for a CT scan. Find out her blood type. Move. Move." Amara paced the waiting area, wringing her hands, biting her nails until they bled. Her legs wouldn't stop shaking. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs, the reality sinking deeper with every passing second. What if I killed her? What if she dies? The thought suffocated her. Suddenly, it wasn't about winning anymore or proving superiority or being the better version. It was about survival, not hers, but Anita's. For the first time, Amara realized that this wasn't some random girl who just happened to look like her. This was something else, something bigger, something terrifying. A nurse soon approached with a clipboard. "We need a blood donor. Her blood type is rare. Do you know her blood group?" Amara blinked, confused. I don't. The nurse sighed. "We don't have time. We'll check you. You might be a match." Amara sat trembling as they drew her blood. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for the results. When the nurse returned, her eyes were wide with surprise. "You're a perfect match," she said. "A rare one, too. It's uncommon to get such a close match outside immediate family." Amara's throat closed. The words hit like a bullet. "Family," she whispered. Her hands trembled as she nodded weakly. "Do it. Take my blood. Just save her." But in her chest, something cracked open. A question she had buried for years. A question screaming louder now than ever. Who is she? As the medical team prepared for the transfusion, Amara sat in the hallway, hands clenched, mind spinning in 1,000 directions. Her designer gown was stained with Anita's blood, but she didn't care. For the first time in her privileged life, money meant nothing. The walls around her felt like they were closing in. Memories flooded her, all the moments she insulted Anita, mocked her, bullied her mercilessly. And now she sat praying that the same girl she once despised wouldn't die. Her fingers laced together as she mumbled, "Please don't die, please. God, don't let her die." For the first time, fear replaced arrogance, guilt replaced hatred, and confusion swallowed her whole. As the blood bag filled from Amara's arm, nurses rushed it to the theater. Inside, doctors fought to stabilize Anita. Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow. Her blood pressure was dangerously low. The head doctor frowned. "If this hemorrhage doesn't stop, we'll lose her." But as the fresh blood was administered, Anita's vitals began to steady, slowly but noticeably. One nurse sighed in relief. "The blood is taking. It's a good match." But even the doctor couldn't hide his curiosity. "Who is this donor? The blood match is almost identical." Another nurse flipped the file and murmured, "It's the girl who brought her in. Same face, actually. I thought they were twins." The doctor's brows furrowed. "Twins? But the patient's file says no siblings." The whisper of mystery thickened like smoke in the air. Obinna arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later after receiving a frantic call. The moment he rushed into the lobby, his heart sank at the sight of Amara sitting, her gown soaked in blood, her face pale, trembling. "What happened?" he roared, rushing to her. Amara stood abruptly, grabbing her father's hands. It's Anita, she." "I didn't mean to," she stammered. Obinna's face contorted with horror. "What do you mean? Where is she?" The nurse stepped forward. "She's stable now. But, sir, we need to discuss something." Obinna frowned. "What?" The nurse exchanged glances with the doctor before saying, "Her blood donor, your daughter, is a perfect match. Not just compatible, identical. Sir, it's very likely they are biological siblings. Possibly twins." Obinna staggered backward as if slapped. What did you just say? The ground beneath his feet felt like it cracked open. Silence. Deafening, suffocating silence. Obinna stared at the doctor, his lips moving but no words coming out. No, that's impossible. My daughter doesn't have a sister. That's not possible. The doctor sighed, exchanging looks with the nurse before replying calmly. Sir, with due respect, blood doesn't lie. The compatibility is too perfect. It's a rare match even for regular siblings. But for identical blood antigens, matching Rh factors, and identical hemoglobin profiles, sir, this only happens with identical twins or at the very least full biological siblings. Obinna's mind spiraled. His knees buckled, and he staggered to sit on one of the waiting benches. No, this isn't possible, this isn't real, he muttered repeatedly. His hands trembled as he held his head. The resemblance he had noticed, the strange pull he felt toward Anita. Everything started making horrifying sense. Amara sat beside him, equally shaken. Her lips quivered as realization flooded her. Daddy, what does this mean? She whispered, her voice small for the first time in her life. Obinna shook his head, unable to answer. His mind raced back to every interaction, Anita's face, her voice, her kindness, and that name Adana. Suddenly, it hit him like a lightning bolt. His eyes widened as the memory came crashing back. The hotel years ago, that night, the cleaner, the mistake, the woman whose name was Adana. His breathing hitched. He shot up from the bench, pacing. No, could it be? His heart pounded, so hard it felt like it would burst through his chest. The doctor placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Sir, you might want to investigate. The truth, it's not what you think. Obinna turned toward the ICU window where Anita lay, pale, unconscious, her face bandaged, her chest rising weakly but steadily. He pressed a palm against the glass, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. Who are you? He whispered. And why do you look like my daughter? But there were no answers, not yet. Anita remained in a coma, her lips still, her eyes closed, her body fighting silently between life and death. The secrets buried for years were now trembling on the edge of exposure, and what Obinna didn't know was that his world was about to unravel in ways he could never imagine. Obinna stood in the hospital hallway, unable to move, unable to breathe. His world felt like it had been turned inside out. Every memory of that night resurfaced in haunting clarity. The hotel, the cleaner with tired eyes, the one-night mistake that he had long buried and forgotten. Adana. The name now echoed in his head like a siren. How could he have forgotten? How could he have been so careless? More importantly, how did this child, no, these children, come from that single night? His hands trembled as he gripped the window frame, staring through the glass at Anita's unconscious body. Her face, swollen and pale, was a mirror of Amara's. His daughter, but which one? Or were both? His heart raced with fear, confusion, and a regret so deep it felt like drowning. Amara sat quietly beside him for the first time in her life. Her usual arrogance dissolved into numb shock. Her mind raced through every cruel word she had ever spat at Anita, every shove, every insult. And now, sitting here, the reality was crashing down on her. She's my sister? The idea felt foreign, impossible. She recalled all the times she mocked Anita for her poverty, her cheap clothes, her background. Now every single word felt like acid in her mouth. Her eyes welled with tears, not just out of guilt, but out of fear. If Anita was truly her sister, what did that mean for everything? For her place in the family? For the love of the father who now stared at Anita like a man who had seen a ghost? Obinna finally staggered back, pressing a hand against his chest. He needed answers. His mind raced back to Adana, that poor hotel maid. What happened to her? Where did she go? Why didn't she tell me? Did she even know who I was? His eyes brimmed with panic. He turned abruptly to Amara. We have to find her. We have to find her mother. I need to know the truth, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with desperation. But the nurse interrupted before they could move. Sir, she's still unconscious, the nurse reported, referring to Anita. Her body is stable, but her consciousness, we don't know when she'll wake up. Obinna gritted his teeth. I don't care. Find her records. Find everything about her. I want to know who her mother is, and I want it now. His fists clenched as the walls of his life trembled, threatening to collapse. The nurse nodded and hurried away, leaving Obinna pacing the floor like a madman. His mind was a hurricane. Questions hit him like waves, one after the other. Did she ever try to reach me? Did she suffer alone while I lived in comfort? Did I unknowingly abandon my own child or children? The guilt was suffocating. His mind replayed every encounter with Anita, her humility, her kindness, her strength despite having nothing. His chest tightened painfully. Tears stung his eyes, but he blinked them away, forcing himself to stay upright. The shame was overwhelming. A billionaire, powerful and feared by many, now standing helpless before the truth that money could not bury. As Obinna gripped the wall for balance, the doctor returned, holding Anita's file. Sir, he began cautiously, her records say her mother's name is Adana. Obinna's breath hitched. The name was a punch straight to his soul. His knees buckled, but he caught himself. Adana, he whispered, almost breathless. It's her, it's really her. He sank onto the bench, palms covering his face, gasping for air as reality hit like a sledgehammer. Everything made sense now. The resemblance, the instant connection, the gut feeling he couldn't explain. He had fathered twins. Twins he never knew existed. One raised in wealth, the other in brutal poverty. One sold to his own family. The cruel irony of life made him tremble. Oh God, what have I done? But just as he tried to compose himself, the doctor added, Sir, she's still unconscious. We can't speak to her yet, but based on her condition and records, you need to prepare yourself. There's more to this story than you think. Obinna stood abruptly, walking toward the ICU window. He stared at Anita's peaceful but fragile face. Her chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm as the machines beeped softly. His fingers pressed against the glass as a tear finally slipped down his cheek. Who are you? He whispered brokenly. And why do you look like my daughter? Behind him, Amara stood frozen, arms crossed over her chest, equally shattered. Her gaze flickered between her father and the girl lying unconscious. The question neither dared voice hung heavily in the air. What happens when she wakes up? Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel TOCHI Stories for more.